My name is Lauren Hartley, and I'm 29 years old. The day I buried my 7-year-old daughter Emma was the day I learned that grief has a very specific weight. It's the weight of an empty church pew where your family should be sitting. Not my husband Marcus. Not my parents who raised me with bedtime stories and birthday parties. Not my sister Victoria who I'd shared a bedroom with for 18 years. They were all at Victoria's baby shower, celebrating life while I said goodbye to mine. The betrayal didn't just break my heart, it shattered every belief I had about what family means. But what I discovered in that devastation would eventually lead me somewhere I never expected, to a truth about love that changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Emma came into our lives on a rainy October morning, 3 weeks early and screaming with the kind of determination that would define her entire personality. From the moment the nurse placed her in my arms, with her shock of dark hair and her tiny fists punching the air, I knew she was going to be extraordinary. Marcus had tears streaming down his face as he kissed both of us, whispering promises about the life we'd build together. Those promises felt so real then, so solid, like stones you could build a foundation on. We named her Emma Rose, after Marcus's grandmother who'd passed away the year before. His family had been overjoyed, treating Emma like she was made of spun gold from day one. My own family's reaction was more complicated. My mother had pursed her lips when she first held Emma, commenting on how small she was, how fussy. Victoria, who was 25 at the time and newly engaged, had seemed distracted during her visit to the hospital, checking her phone constantly and leaving after only 20 minutes because she had a dress fitting scheduled. But none of that mattered to me then. I had my daughter, my husband, and a future that stretched ahead like an endless summer. Marcus worked as a sales manager for a tech company, bringing home a comfortable salary that allowed me to take an extended maternity leave from my job as an elementary school teacher. We lived in a 3-bedroom ranch house in the suburbs with a backyard perfect for a swing set and eventually a treehouse. Life was exactly what I'd always imagined it would be. Emma was a bright, curious child who asked a million questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do butterflies sleep? Can dogs understand what we're saying? She had this way of tilting her head when she was thinking, her brown eyes squinting slightly as she processed information. She loved painting, creating elaborate stories about the colorful swirls and shapes she made. Our refrigerator was covered with her artwork, a constantly rotating gallery of her imagination. My relationship with my family had always been complicated, though I didn't fully recognize it until much later. My parents, Richard and Helen Sutton, were both retired accountants who approached life with spreadsheet precision. Everything had its proper place, its appropriate timing, its calculated value. Emotions were messy variables they preferred to minimize. My sister Victoria was their golden child, the one who'd followed their career advice, married appropriately, and always made choices they approved of. I was the daughter who'd chosen teaching over accounting, who'd married Marcus even though he didn't come from the right kind of family background, who'd gotten pregnant sooner than my mother thought was financially responsible. Victoria and I had been close as children, sharing secrets and dreams in the darkness of our shared bedroom. But as we grew older, something shifted. She became more competitive, more concerned with outdoing me in ways that felt increasingly deliberate. When I got engaged, she announced her engagement 3 weeks later with a larger ring and a more expensive venue. When I bought our house, she bought a bigger one in a better neighborhood. It was subtle enough that I could convince myself I was imagining it, that sisters just naturally compare their lives sometimes. Marcus and I had been married for 3 years when Emma was born, and those early years felt like magic. He was an attentive father, coming home from work eager to play with Emma, reading her bedtime stories with different voices for each character, building elaborate block towers just so she could knock them down with delighted squeals. We had date nights where my mother would grudgingly agree to babysit, though she always had comments about Emma's bedtime routine or her eating habits. We took family vacations to the beach where Emma collected shells and chased waves. Everything felt normal, happy, whole. The first sign that something was wrong came just after Emma's 7th birthday. She'd been complaining of headaches for a few weeks, which I'd attributed to too much screen time or not enough sleep. But then she started having trouble with her balance, stumbling occasionally when she walked. At first, I thought she was just being clumsy, going through an awkward phase. But when she fell down the stairs at school and couldn't quite explain how it happened, her teacher called me with concern in her voice that made my stomach drop. I took Emma to our pediatrician, Dr. Sanders, a kind woman who'd been seeing Emma since birth. She did a thorough examination, checking Emma's reflexes and coordination, asking questions about symptoms I hadn't even thought to mention. The increasing fatigue. The occasional double vision Emma had mentioned but I dismissed. Dr. Sanders's face remained professionally neutral, but I could see something flickering in her eyes that terrified me. She referred us to a pediatric neurologist immediately. Not in 3 weeks or next month, but that same afternoon. The neurologist, Dr. Patricia Coleman, had an office filled with cheerful posters and toys meant to put children at ease. Emma sat on the examination table swinging her legs, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. Dr. Coleman performed similar tests to Dr. Sanders, but more extensive, more thorough. Then she ordered an MRI, her voice calm but firm in a way that told me this wasn't optional or precautionary. This was urgent. Marcus met us at the imaging center, leaving work in the middle of an important meeting. He held Emma's hand as the technicians explained the procedure, promised her she was being so brave, told her it would sound like a spaceship but wouldn't hurt at all. I watched through the window as my baby disappeared into that massive white machine, and something in my chest compressed so tightly I could barely breathe. Marcus stood beside me, his hand gripping mine so hard it hurt, both of us frozen in that horrible space between not knowing and knowing. The results came back within hours, which I later learned was never a good sign. Dr. Coleman called us into her office while Emma sat in the waiting room with the nurse, coloring in a princess coloring book. The doctor's desk was neat, organized, with a photo of her own children smiling in silver frames. She sat down across from us, her hands folded on top of a manila folder that contained my daughter's future. "There's a mass in Emma's brain," she said, her voice gentle but direct. "It's located in the brainstem, which is why she's been having balance issues and headaches. We need to do a biopsy to determine exactly what type of tumor we're dealing with, but based on the imaging and her symptoms, I'm concerned it may be a diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma." The words meant nothing to me. They were just sounds, syllables strung together in a sentence I couldn't process. Marcus asked the question I couldn't form. "What does that mean? What's the prognosis?" Dr. Coleman's expression softened with a compassion that told me everything before she spoke. DIPG is an aggressive form of pediatric brain cancer. It's inoperable because of its location, and unfortunately, it has a very poor prognosis. With radiation therapy, we can sometimes slow its progression, but the median survival time is approximately 9 to 12 months from diagnosis. The room tilted. 9 to 12 months. Less than a year. My 7-year-old daughter, who still believed in the tooth fairy and wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, had less than a year to live. Marcus made a sound beside me, something between a gasp and a sob. I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like my entire body had been hollowed out and replaced with static. "We'll need to confirm with a biopsy," Dr. Coleman continued, "but I want you to understand what we're facing so you can begin to prepare. There are clinical trials we can explore, and I'll refer you to the best pediatric oncology team in the state. We'll do everything we can to give Emma quality time and manage her symptoms. Quality time. Not a cure. Not treatment that would save her. Just quality time, as if we were planning a vacation instead of my daughter's death." I remember Marcus asking questions, his voice breaking, demanding to know about every possible option, every experimental treatment, everything that might give us hope. Dr. Coleman answered each one patiently, but the underlying message never changed. Emma was going to die, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. When we finally left her office, Emma looked up from her coloring book with a smile. "All done? Can we get ice cream now? You promised." I knelt down and pulled her into my arms, holding her so tightly she squirmed. "Mom, you're squishing me." She laughed. Marcus bent down and wrapped his arms around both of us, and we stayed like that in the middle of the waiting room, the three of us clinging to each other while everything we'd known as normal crumbled around us. That night, after we'd gotten the ice cream and taken Emma home and put her to bed with extra stories and kisses, Marcus and I sat at our kitchen table in the dark. We didn't turn on the lights. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, I whispered the question that had been consuming me since we left Dr. Coleman's office. How do we tell her? Marcus's face crumpled. I don't know. How do you tell a 7-year-old she's dying? I called my parents that night. My hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Mom answered on the third ring, her voice annoyed at the late hour. This better be important, Lauren. It's past 10. Emma's sick, I said, my voice breaking on my daughter's name. It's cancer. Brain cancer. The doctors say she has less than a year. Silence stretched across the line. Then my mother's voice, cool and controlled. Are they certain? Have you gotten a second opinion? These doctors can be wrong. We're getting a biopsy to confirm, but yes, they're certain. It's a specific type of tumor. It's terminal, Mom. My daughter is dying. More silence. I could hear my father's voice in the background asking what was wrong. Then my mother again, speaking not to me but to him. It's Emma.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Cancer. When she came back on the line, her voice had that practiced sympathy I'd heard her use at funerals for people she barely knew. Well, that's just terrible. Absolutely terrible. We'll come by this weekend to see her. Have you told Victoria yet? The question felt bizarre given the circumstances, but I answered anyway. Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. You should call her tonight. This will be very hard on her, you know. She's pregnant now, and stress isn't good for the baby. I actually pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it, certain I'd misheard. Victoria was pregnant? How did I not know this? And why was my mother more concerned about Victoria's stress than Emma's death? Mom, did you hear what I said? Emma is dying. Yes, I heard you. It's tragic. But Victoria's in a delicate condition, and we need to be mindful of that. Try to tell her gently. I'll talk to you this weekend. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, trying to process what had just happened. My daughter had a death sentence, and my mother's primary concern was my sister's pregnancy. Marcus came into the kitchen and saw my face. What's wrong? What did they say? Victoria's pregnant, I said numbly. And my mom said I need to tell her gently about Emma because stress is bad for the baby. Marcus's expression shifted through confusion to anger. Are you serious? That's her response? Your daughter is dying and she's worried about Victoria's stress levels? I called Victoria next, because apparently that was my responsibility even in the middle of the worst night of my life. She answered cheerfully, music playing in the background like she was at a party. Hey, what's up? I have big news, but you go first. Emma's sick, I said, too exhausted for preamble. It's cancer. Brain cancer. Terminal. The doctors give her 9 to 12 months. The music in the background cut off abruptly. Oh my God. Lauren, that's... I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry. Her response seemed genuine, shocked, horrified in the way any normal person would be. I felt a flood of relief that at least someone in my family was reacting appropriately. Thanks. I managed. We're still processing it all. We just found out today. God, what terrible timing, Victoria said. And I heard something shift in her voice. I was actually calling to tell you I'm pregnant. 12 weeks. We were going to announce it this weekend, but now obviously that seems inappropriate given your situation. My situation. As if Emma's terminal cancer was an inconvenient scheduling conflict. Congratulations, I said automatically. Because what else could I say? That's wonderful news. No, it's fine. You should still announce it. Life goes on, right? We'll celebrate with you. Are you sure? Because Mom said I should wait, given everything. But honestly, Lauren, I've been dying to share the news. We're having a girl. I'm already planning the nursery and everything. We talked for a few more minutes, though I couldn't later remember what was said. When I hung up, Marcus was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Did she seriously just tell you about her pregnancy right after you told her Emma is dying? She asked if it was okay first. I said weakly, defending her automatically despite the sick feeling in my stomach. It's good news. We need good news right now. But Marcus's question lingered in my mind as I lay awake that night. listening to Emma's peaceful breathing through the baby monitor we'd never put away. Why had Victoria made her pregnancy announcement about whether it was appropriate timing, rather than simply being present in my grief? Why had my mother's first concern been Victoria's stress rather than Emma's diagnosis? These were the first cracks in a foundation I thought was solid. Hairline fractures I tried desperately to ignore because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging that the family I'd believed in might not actually exist. The biopsy confirmed Dr. Coleman's suspicions. Diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, grade 4, inoperable, terminal. We started radiation immediately, driving Emma to the hospital 5 days a week for treatments that made her violently ill and exhausted. Her beautiful dark hair began falling out in clumps, and we made a ceremony of shaving her head together, letting her pick out colorful scarves and hats to wear. She chose princess crowns and superhero masks, approaching her illness with a bravery that broke my heart every single day. Marcus and I took turns staying home with her, coordinating our schedules around treatments and doctor appointments and the rapidly narrowing window of time when Emma felt well enough to do normal things. We took her to the zoo. We had movie marathons. We made every single day count because we knew exactly how few we had left. My school was incredibly supportive, arranging for a long-term substitute so I could be with Emma full-time. Marcus's company was less understanding, pressuring him about missed meetings and declining productivity, but he ignored them, prioritizing our daughter over his career. My parents visited exactly twice in the first month. Brief, uncomfortable visits where they sat stiffly on our couch making awkward conversation while Emma showed them her latest paintings. They never asked how we were really doing, never offered to help with anything practical, never stayed longer than an hour. Victoria sent care packages, which I appreciated, filled with coloring books and stuffed animals and encouraging cards. But she never actually visited, always having some reason why she couldn't make the drive. Morning sickness, doctor's appointments, work obligations. 3 months into Emma's diagnosis, Victoria called with exciting news. She was having a baby shower, and she wanted me to be there. "It's going to be at Mom and Dad's house," she said, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "The theme is garden party, very elegant. I'm sending you the invitation, but I wanted to personally invite you because you're my sister and this is such a special moment." "When is it?" I asked, pulling up my calendar already filled with Emma's treatment schedule and appointments. Victoria told me the date, and my heart sank. "That's the weekend of Emma's birthday. We're planning something special for her." "Oh," Victoria said, her enthusiasm dimming. "Well, maybe you could come for part of it? The shower is in the afternoon. You could do Emma's birthday in the morning and then come over." "Victoria, I don't think you understand. Emma might not have another birthday. This is probably her last one. I'm not leaving her party to come to a baby shower." A long pause. Then Victoria's voice cooler now. "I understand Emma's sick, Lauren, but life doesn't stop for everyone else. This is my first baby. This is important to me. And this is my daughter's last birthday," I said, anger finally breaking through the numbness I'd been living in. "That's more important than a baby shower. Can't you just reschedule it? Everything is already planned. The venue, the caterers, the guests. I can't reschedule because it's inconvenient for you." Her words hit me like a slap. Inconvenient. My daughter's terminal illness was inconvenient. "We'll send a gift," I said quietly. "But we won't be there." Victoria hung up without saying goodbye. Emma's 7th birthday was beautiful and heartbreaking. We filled our backyard with butterflies, her favorite, renting live butterfly displays and decorating everything with butterfly motifs. Emma wore a princess dress and her favorite crown, her bald head covered with a purple scarf she'd decorated with markers. About 20 people came, mostly parents of Emma's classmates and a few of Marcus's coworkers. None of my family attended. My parents sent a card with a check. Victoria sent nothing. Emma was tired but happy, delighting in the butterflies landing on her hands, giggling as we sang happy birthday, making a wish as she blew out her candles that I knew would never come true. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me with those searching brown eyes. "Mom, am I going to get better?" It was the question I'd been dreading, the one we'd been dancing around for months. Dr. Coleman had advised us to be honest in age-appropriate ways, to let Emma ask questions and answer them truthfully without overwhelming her. I sat on the edge of her bed and chose my words carefully. The doctors are doing everything they can to help you feel good and have fun. That's what matters most. But am I dying? Like Grandma's dog that went to heaven? My throat closed. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to lie, to protect her from this truth for just a little longer. But she deserved honesty. She deserved to know. Yes, baby. The sickness in your brain is very serious, and the doctors can't fix it. But we're going to make sure every single day you have is filled with love and fun and everything that makes you happy. Emma processed this for a moment, then nodded solemnly. Okay. Can we go to the aquarium tomorrow? They have a new penguin exhibit. Of course, I whispered. Anything you want. After she fell asleep, I went downstairs where Marcus was cleaning up birthday decorations. He looked up when he heard me on the stairs and saw my face. You told her? I nodded, unable to speak. He dropped the balloons he was holding and pulled me into his arms, and we stood there in our kitchen surrounded by birthday remnants while I finally let myself completely fall apart. The next few months became a strange dance between hope and despair, between making memories and preparing for goodbye. Emma had good days and bad days, the tumor's pressure on her brainstem creating unpredictable symptoms. Some mornings she'd wake up smiling and ready for adventure. Other mornings she couldn't lift her head from the pillow without vomiting. We learned to treasure the good moments and endure the bad ones, always aware of the hourglass running out. Marcus changed during this time in ways I didn't immediately recognize. At first, he seemed to throw himself into being present, taking Emma on special outings and creating elaborate experiences for her. He documented everything obsessively, taking thousands of photos and videos as if he could capture her essence before it slipped away. But gradually I noticed him becoming more distant, spending longer hours at work even though I'd asked him to be home more. He started taking phone calls in another room, closing doors that had always been open. When I confronted him about it one evening after Emma was asleep, he insisted it was just work stress. The company's been on my case about performance. I need to make sure we don't lose my income, especially with all the medical bills. It was a reasonable explanation, one I wanted to believe because questioning it meant acknowledging something I wasn't ready to face. Victoria's pregnancy progressed publicly and elaborately. Her social media was filled with professional maternity photos, gender reveal parties, and nursery decoration updates. My mother commented on every post with enthusiasm she'd never shown for Emma's milestones. Meanwhile, my phone stayed mostly silent except for medical appointment reminders and messages from Emma's doctors. The contrast wasn't lost on me, but I told myself I was being sensitive, that of course people would celebrate new life, especially when surrounded by death. 4 months before Emma's eventual passing, Victoria called with an update about her baby shower. The guest list had grown to over 60 people, and she'd hired a professional party planner. She rattled off details about the menu and decorations and gifts she was hoping for, never once asking about Emma. When she finally paused for breath, I interjected. How far along are you now? 28 weeks. Getting so big and uncomfortable. But everyone says that's normal. The doctor says everything looks perfect. Another pause. Then she added almost as an afterthought. How's Emma doing? Is she still in treatment? Still in treatment suggested Emma had a choice, as if she could simply decide to stop being terminally ill. She's declining, I said flatly. The radiation didn't work. We're just managing her comfort now with medication. Oh, well, that's really hard. I'm sorry. Hey, I meant to ask you. What do you think about the name Charlotte? Mark and I are trying to decide between that and Sophia. I provided an opinion about baby names while my daughter slowly died upstairs, because apparently that's what sisters do. They discuss nursery colors and name options while ignoring the elephant in the room, or in this case, the dying child. My parents remained frustratingly uninvolved throughout Emma's decline. They called every few weeks, conversations that felt like checking boxes on a list rather than genuine connection. My father always asked about financial matters, whether our insurance was covering everything, if we needed to discuss Emma's funeral expenses. My mother talked about Victoria's pregnancy, how excited they were to become grandparents again, as if Emma wasn't their grandchild too, as if she wasn't still alive. The few times they visited, They seemed uncomfortable with Emma's physical deterioration. She'd lost weight, her face gaunt and her movements increasingly uncoordinated. She tired easily and sometimes forgot words or had trouble speaking clearly. My mother would sit on the edge of the couch farthest from Emma, making minimal eye contact, leaving as quickly as politeness allowed. My father retreated into his phone, answering emails and checking stock prices while his granddaughter tried to show him her latest painting. One particularly painful visit, Emma asked my mother directly why she never stayed very long. "Don't you like being with me, Grandma?" My mother's face flushed. "Of course I do, sweetheart. Grandma just has a lot of responsibilities. We're helping Aunt Victoria prepare for the baby, and that takes up quite a bit of time." Emma nodded, accepting this explanation with the trust children have that adults are telling the truth. After they left, she turned to me with confusion in her eyes. "Is Aunt Victoria's baby more important than me?" The question shattered something inside my chest. "No, baby. No one is more important than you. You're the most important person in the world. But they don't visit much. And when they do, they seem like they want to leave." Emma's perception was painfully accurate. I had no good explanation that wouldn't hurt her further, so I deflected. "They're just not good with sickness. Some people aren't. It doesn't mean they don't love you." Even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Did they love her? Or had Emma always been somewhat disappointing to them? The grandchild who didn't fit their vision, whose parents hadn't met their standards. And now that she was dying, was she simply too uncomfortable a reminder of mortality? Too messy an emotion for people who preferred life to be neat and controllable? Marcus's distance grew more pronounced as Emma's condition worsened. He started coming home late several nights a week, claiming extended work meetings or client dinners that couldn't be avoided. When he was home, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone, sometimes smiling at messages before quickly hiding the screen. The intimacy we'd shared, the partnership that had sustained us through the early months of diagnosis, began to feel like something that had happened to different people in a different lifetime. One night, after he'd missed another bedtime routine with Emma, I found him in the garage supposedly organizing tools. "I'm worried about us," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "You're not here, Marcus. Even when you're physically present, you're somewhere else." He didn't look up from the toolbox he was rearranging. "I'm dealing with a lot at work. I told you that. We need the income, especially now." Especially now meant especially with Emma dying, though neither of us said it explicitly. "But I'm drowning here. I need you. Emma needs you. We both need you present, not just financially but emotionally." He finally met my eyes, and something in his expression sent ice through my veins. "I'm doing the best I can, Lauren. This isn't easy for me either. Maybe it would help if your family actually showed up occasionally instead of leaving everything to us." The deflection was obvious, but I was too tired to push harder. He was right that my family's absence made everything harder. What I didn't realize yet was that Marcus was using that absence as cover for his own withdrawal, letting me blame my parents and Victoria instead of questioning his behavior. 6 weeks before Emma passed, Victoria sent a group text to the family chat. "Baby shower is finalized for March 15th at 2 p.m. at Mom and Dad's house. Mandatory attendance for everyone. Can't wait to celebrate with my favorite people." I stared at the date, something nagging at the back of my exhausted mind. Then I checked Emma's medical calendar and my blood ran cold. March 15th was the date of Emma's scheduled palliative care consultation, the meeting where we discuss end-of-life planning and comfort measures for her final days. Dr. Colin had specifically requested both parents be present, because the decisions we'd need to make were too important to handle alone. I'd marked it on every calendar, had reminded Marcus multiple times, had been mentally preparing myself for weeks. I texted back immediately. "I can't make that date. That's Emma's palliative care meeting with her doctor." Victoria's response came quickly. "Can't you reschedule? This is the only date that works for the venue and the caterer." Before I could respond, my mother chimed in. "Surely the doctor's office has some flexibility. Victoria's been planning this for months." My father added his input. "These baby showers are important family events. Emma's doctors must have other available times." I sat on our bathroom floor reading these messages, my hands shaking with rage and disbelief. They wanted me to reschedule my dying daughter's end-of-life planning meeting to attend a baby shower. They genuinely believed a party was more important than preparing for Emma's death. I typed and deleted several responses before finally settling on simple truth. I will not be rescheduling Emma's appointment. This meeting is about her final weeks of life. I won't be at the shower. Victoria called me within minutes, her voice tight with anger. Are you serious right now? You're going to miss my baby shower? Do you have any idea how hurt I am? This is one of the most important days of my life, and you're choosing not to come? I'm not choosing anything, I said, exhausted beyond measure. Emma is dying. Her medical needs come before a party. It's not just a party, Lauren. It's celebrating my daughter's life before she's even born. Why is your daughter more important than mine? The question hung in the air. So absurd I almost laughed. Because my daughter is dying, Victoria. She's 7 years old and she's dying. Your daughter is healthy and you have your whole life ahead of you. I have weeks. Maybe days. How can you not understand the difference? You've always been like this, Victoria snapped. Everything has to be about you. Your problems, your drama, your daughter. Just once, I'd like my moment without you ruining it with your crisis. My crisis. Emma's terminal cancer was a crisis I was using to ruin Victoria's moment. I hung up without responding because there was nothing left to say. My mother called next, her voice cold with disapproval. That was very rude, hanging up on your sister. She's pregnant and hormonal. You need to be more understanding. I need to be more understanding? I repeated slowly. Mom, do you hear yourself? Emma is dying. Actually dying. This isn't about understanding or being sensitive. This is about priorities. And Victoria's pregnancy is our priority right now. She needs family support during this special time. Your situation with Emma is tragic, but it doesn't mean the rest of the world stops turning. We're all still living our lives. My situation with Emma, as if her terminal illness was a personal inconvenience rather than a devastating loss. Fine, I said quietly. Live your lives. Celebrate the baby shower. But don't expect me to participate. You're being selfish. My father interjected, apparently having been listening on speakerphone. This family is trying to maintain some normalcy and joy, and you're making everything about Emma's illness. We're all sad about what's happening, but we can't put our lives on hold indefinitely. I'm not asking you to put your life on hold. I'm asking you to prioritize my daughter's death over a baby shower. That's not indefinite. That's weeks. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. They'd already made their choice, and Emma had lost. I'll send a gift, I said finally. But I won't be there. And neither will Marcus or Emma. Suit yourself, my mother said stiffly. But don't come crying to us about feeling unsupported when you're the one pushing us away. I told Marcus about the conversation that evening, expecting him to be outraged on our behalf. Instead, he seemed distracted, barely listening as he scrolled through his phone. That's rough, he said absently. Your family is really something else. We should probably send an expensive gift though. Don't want to burn bridges completely. His response bothered me, but I didn't have the energy to analyze it. Everything bothered me lately. The sound of the hospice nurse's cheerful voice. The smell of Emma's medications. The way sunlight came through the windows like everything was normal when nothing would ever be normal again. I was operating on autopilot, moving through each day in a fog of anticipatory grief and exhaustion. Emma's decline accelerated in the weeks following that conversation. She began having seizures, small at first but growing more frequent and severe. Her speech became increasingly garbled, her movements uncoordinated. She slept more and more, waking for shorter periods each day. The hospice nurse, a compassionate woman named Grace, warned us that we were likely in the final month, maybe less. We need to start thinking about final arrangements, Grace said gently one afternoon while Emma napped. Have you discussed her wishes? What kind of service she might want? The question seemed impossible. How do you plan a funeral for your 7-year-old daughter? What kind of service does a child want when they shouldn't need a service at all? Emma had mentioned once, in one of her rare direct conversations about dying, that she wanted butterflies at her funeral. Lots and lots of butterflies like my birthday. And purple flowers. Purple is my favorite. So we planned for butterflies and purple flowers, trying not to think about the fact that we were planning at all. I called my parents to inform them we'd scheduled Emma's funeral for March 18th, 3 days after Victoria's baby shower. I chose that date deliberately, wanting to see if they'd attend or if they'd use the shower as an excuse to be too tired or too busy. My mother's response was immediate and telling. "Oh, that's going to be difficult timing. We'll be exhausted from the shower, and your father has a golf tournament that weekend." "Emma's funeral," I said slowly. "Your granddaughter's funeral. And you're worried about being tired from a party? Lauren, don't take that tone. Of course we'll try to be there. We're just saying it's not ideal timing. You could have consulted us before scheduling it." The absurdity of the statement left me speechless. I couldn't schedule my daughter's death around their social calendar. "Emma is in hospice," I managed finally. "She's dying. I can't control when that happens or when the funeral needs to be." "Of course not, dear. We understand. We'll do our best to attend." Their best. Not a guarantee, not a promise. Just their best, as if Emma's funeral was a casual obligation they'd try to work into their schedule if nothing better came up. Marcus's reaction to the funeral planning was similarly distant. He approved everything I suggested without really engaging, nodding along while clearly thinking about something else. When I asked him to help choose music for the service, he waved me off. "You're better at that stuff. Whatever you pick will be fine." I don't even know what Emma would want. The statement shocked me. How could he not know? He'd been her father for 7 years, had read her bedtime stories and played pretend and listened to her endless questions about the world. But when I challenged him on it, he got defensive. "I've been busy trying to keep us financially afloat while you focus on the emotional stuff. We all have our roles, Lauren." Our roles? As if parenting a dying child could be divided into neat categories. Financial versus emotional. As if his distance was somehow a productive division of labor rather than an abandonment. Something was deeply wrong in our marriage, but I couldn't address it while simultaneously watching Emma die. So I added it to the growing list of problems I'd deal with later. If there was ever a later. If I survived this loss intact enough to deal with anything. 2 weeks before Emma passed, Victoria sent a photo to the family group chat. It was her baby shower invitation, elaborate and expensive looking, with gold foil lettering and a garden theme. "Can't wait to celebrate with everyone," she'd written. "This is going to be the best day ever." I stared at the invitation, at the smiling photo of Victoria cradling her pregnant belly, at the date that would forever be linked in my mind with planning my daughter's death. And I realized with sudden clarity that my family had made their choice. They'd chosen the baby shower over Emma's palliative care meeting. They'd chosen celebration over grief. They'd chosen Victoria's future over Emma's ending. I showed the invitation to Marcus that evening. "Look at this. They're still going forward with it on the same day as Emma's appointment. Can you believe this?" Marcus glanced at the photo, then back to his phone. "Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Did you order the flowers for the funeral?" The casual way he changed the subject, the lack of outrage or even surprise, triggered something in me. Do you even care? About any of this? About Emma, about what my family is doing, about anything? He looked up, irritation flashing across his face. "Of course I care. What kind of question is that? I'm here, aren't I? I'm working to pay the bills. I'm dealing with this too. But you're not really here. You're physically present sometimes, but you're checked out. You're on your phone constantly, you're distant with Emma. You barely talk to me anymore. What's going on, Marcus?" "Nothing's going on. You're stressed and looking for problems where there aren't any. Maybe if your family was actually supportive, you wouldn't be so paranoid about everyone else." He walked out of the room before I could respond, leaving me standing there with Victoria's invitation in my hand and a sick feeling growing in my stomach that had nothing to do with Emma's illness. The week of March 15th arrived with a strange sense of inevitability. Emma was slipping away more each day, sleeping most of the time, barely eating, struggling to communicate even when awake. Grace, the hospice nurse, had begun staying overnight, a sign that the end was very near. "It could be any day now," she told us gently. "Maybe a week at most. You should call anyone who wants to say goodbye." I called my parents. Dad answered, background noise suggesting they were at a restaurant or party. "Lauren, this isn't a great time. We're at the country club." "Emma's dying," I said without preamble. "The hospice nurse says it could be any day." If you want to say goodbye, you need to come now. A pause. Then my father's voice, uncomfortable. We're actually quite busy this week with Victoria's shower preparations. There's a lot to coordinate. Could she maybe hold on until after the weekend? The question was so absurd, so monumentally inappropriate, that I actually laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. Could she hold on? She's 7 years old with a brain tumor, Dad. She can't hold on for a party. Then I suppose we'll have to try to visit before the shower if we can find time. Your mother is helping Victoria with final preparations. It's all quite time-consuming. Don't bother, I said coldly. If you can't prioritize saying goodbye to your dying granddaughter, then just don't come at all. Lauren, that's uncalled for. We're doing our best to balance everything. No, you're not. You're choosing Victoria's baby shower over Emma's death. Own that choice. Don't pretend it's about balance. I hung up and immediately called Victoria. She answered cheerfully, music playing in the background. Hey, I'm just putting together welcome bags for the shower. What's up? Emma's dying. Like, actively dying. The nurse says days at most. If you want to say goodbye to your niece, you need to come today. The music stopped. Oh God, Lauren. I'm so sorry. But I can't come today. I have the final walkthrough with the party planner, and tomorrow is the actual shower. Everything is already set up. Can I come on Sunday? Sunday might be too late. She might not be conscious by Sunday. She might not be alive. Well, I don't know what you want me to do, Victoria said, frustration creeping into her voice. I can't exactly cancel the shower now. Everyone's already committed. Mom and Dad are hosting. The whole family will be there. The whole family except me and Marcus and the dying little girl whose absence apparently didn't matter enough to change any plans. Fine. Enjoy your shower. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. You're being incredibly unfair right now, Victoria shot back. I'm sorry Emma is sick, I truly am. But this is my first baby. This is supposed to be a special time for me. And you're trying to make me feel guilty for celebrating. I'm not trying to make you feel anything. I'm asking you to say goodbye to Emma before she dies. If that request makes you feel guilty, maybe you should examine why. She hung up on me this time. I sat in Emma's room watching her sleep, her breathing shallow and irregular, her small chest barely rising and falling. Marcus came in briefly, kissed Emma's forehead without really looking at her, and left again without speaking to me. I was utterly alone in the most devastating moment of my life, surrounded by people who were physically present but emotionally absent. March 15th arrived with gray skies and cold rain. Emma barely woke that morning, her breathing more labored than it had been. Grace checked her vital signs and gave me a look that confirmed what I already knew. Very soon now. Today or tomorrow. I want to be here when it happens. I told her. I want her to know she's not alone. Of course. I'll make sure you have privacy when the time comes. Do you want me to call anyone for you? There's no one to call, I said quietly. My family is at a baby shower. My husband is somewhere else. It's just me and Emma. Grace squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with compassion. Then you're exactly who Emma needs. You're enough, Lauren. You've always been enough. I climbed into bed beside my daughter, carefully positioning myself so I wouldn't disturb her IV lines or oxygen tube. I talked to her even though she couldn't respond, telling her stories about when she was a baby, about all the ways she'd brought joy to my life, about how proud I was to be her mother. I told her it was okay to let go, that I'd be okay even though I wouldn't be, that she didn't need to fight anymore. Around 2 p.m., the exact time Victoria's baby shower was starting, Emma's breathing changed. It became even more irregular, with long pauses between breaths that made my heart stop each time. Grace came in and sat quietly in the corner, giving us space but providing professional presence. I held Emma's hand, stroking her hair, whispering that I loved her over and over like a prayer. At 2:47 p.m., while my family celebrated new life with champagne and finger sandwiches and games about baby names, Emma took her last breath. It was quiet, unremarkable, just a small exhale that didn't have an inhale following it. For a moment, I waited for the next breath, certain it would come. But Grace stood and came to the bedside, checking for a pulse, listening for heartbeat, finally meeting my eyes with gentle confirmation. She's gone, Grace said softly. I'm so sorry. I held Emma for another hour, unable to let go. Unable to accept that this small body that had grown inside me and depended on me and loved me was now just an empty shell. Her skin grew cooler under my hands, her face relaxing into an expression of peace she hadn't worn in months. She looked younger somehow, like a sleeping baby rather than a 7-year-old who'd suffered through terminal illness. When I finally allowed Grace to call the funeral home, I moved mechanically through the necessary steps. Signing paperwork, choosing clothes for Emma to be dressed in, watching strangers load my daughter's body onto a stretcher and wheel her out of our house for the last time. Marcus came home sometime during this process. I couldn't remember exactly when. He stood in the doorway of Emma's empty room, staring at the bed where she'd died, his face unreadable. "She's gone," I told him unnecessarily. He nodded but didn't move, didn't cry, didn't reach for me. After a long moment, he turned and walked to our bedroom, closing the door behind him. I stood alone in Emma's room surrounded by her stuffed animals and paintings and the medical equipment that was no longer needed, and realized I'd never felt more isolated in my entire life. I called my parents that evening to tell them Emma had passed. My mother answered, her voice bright with champagne happiness. "The shower was absolutely beautiful, Lauren. You really should have been here. Victoria got the most wonderful gifts, and the decorations were just stunning. We took so many photos." "Emma died today," I interrupted. "At 2:47 this afternoon, while you were at the shower." Silence stretched across the line, then my mother's voice stripped of its earlier joy. Oh my God. Why didn't you call us? We would have come." "I did call you. Yesterday. I told you she was dying and you said you were too busy with shower preparations. So I watched my daughter die alone while you celebrated a baby who isn't even born yet." My father's voice joined the conversation, defensive and sharp. "That's not fair, Lauren. We didn't know it would be today specifically. How could we have known the exact timing? The hospice nurse told us it was imminent. Days at most. You chose to take that risk. You chose the shower over the possibility of saying goodbye. Now you'll have to live with that choice." My mother started crying, but they sounded like tears of guilt rather than grief. "We're coming over right now. We need to be with you. Don't bother. I'm planning a funeral. The service is Sunday at 11 a.m. at Riverside Chapel. If you can fit it into your schedule between recovering from the shower and Dad's golf tournament, you're welcome to attend." I hung up before they could respond. Victoria called minutes later, her voice thick with tears. "Lauren, Mom just told me. I'm so sorry. I should have come to say goodbye. I know that now. I should have been there." "Yes, you should have. But you made your choice. And now Emma is gone and you'll never have another chance. Please don't hate me. I was selfish and stupid. I got caught up in the excitement and I didn't think clearly about what really mattered. Can you forgive me?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But right now, I just need you to understand that there are consequences to the choices we make. You chose a party over your dying niece. That's something you'll have to carry." Victoria sobbed into the phone, but I felt nothing. The numbness that had settled over me since Emma's death was complete, insulating me from feeling anything at all. I gave her the funeral information and ended the call, then sat in the dark living room staring at nothing. Marcus emerged from our bedroom around midnight, his eyes red but dry. "We should talk about the arrangements," he said, his voice flat. "I've already handled everything. The service is Sunday at 11. Butterflies and purple flowers, like Emma wanted. You just need to show up." He nodded and retreated back to the bedroom without another word. The distance between us had grown into a chasm I wasn't sure could ever be bridged. We were two people drowning in the same ocean but unable to reach for each other. The days before the funeral passed in a haze. People sent flowers and cards with the usual platitudes about angels and heaven and peace. I responded to none of them. My parents called repeatedly, but I let it go to voicemail. Victoria sent long text messages apologizing and explaining and justifying, which I deleted without reading completely. The only people I spoke to were the funeral director and Grace, who checked on me daily despite her job technically being done. Sunday morning arrived cold and bright. I dressed in black, did my makeup carefully to hide the sleepless nights, and drove myself to the chapel because Marcus had left early without explanation. The space was filled with purple flowers and butterfly decorations, beautiful and heartbreaking. Emma's small white casket sat at the front, covered with a spray of purple roses. I took my seat in the front row, alone. The chapel filled with people from Emma's school, neighbors, some of Marcus's co-workers. His family occupied several rows, his mother already crying. But the seats reserved for my parents and Victoria remained empty as the service time approached. The funeral director approached me discreetly. "Should we wait a few more minutes for your family?" "No," I said clearly. "Start the service." They made their choice. At that moment, the chapel doors opened and my parents rushed in. My mother's face blotchy with tears, my father looking uncomfortable in a suit that seemed too tight. Behind them came Victoria, heavily pregnant and moving slowly, her husband Mark supporting her arm. They slid into the front row beside me without speaking, their presence feeling more like obligation than genuine grief. The service was beautiful. Emma's teacher spoke about her curiosity and kindness. Marcus's mother shared memories of Emma's laughter. The school principal read a poem. I stood at the podium, and somehow made it through my prepared remarks about Emma's bravery and love and the light she'd brought to the world. My voice cracked only once, when I mentioned how she'd wanted butterflies at her funeral because they represented transformation and freedom. As I spoke, I noticed Marcus wasn't in his designated seat beside me. I scanned the chapel and found him in the back row, sitting next to a woman I didn't recognize. She was young, pretty, and had her hand on his arm in a gesture of comfort that looked far too familiar. Something cold settled in my chest, but I pushed it aside. One crisis at a time. At the cemetery, we released live butterflies as Emma's casket was lowered into the ground. They fluttered up into the blue sky, dancing on the wind, and I imagined Emma's spirit flying with them, finally free from the body that had betrayed her. My parents stood stiffly beside me, my mother crying loudly, my father staring at his shoes. Victoria wept dramatically, clutching Mark's arm, her pregnant belly a stark reminder of the life she was celebrating while we mourned Emma's death. After everyone else had left, I remained at the graveside alone. Marcus had disappeared with the mysterious woman, my parents had left citing exhaustion, Victoria had needed to rest because of the baby. I sat on the grass beside the fresh grave, and finally allowed myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. The rage at my family for choosing a party over their dying granddaughter. The betrayal of Marcus's obvious affair. The crushing, suffocating grief of losing my baby girl. The loneliness of facing it all without support. I cried until I had nothing left, until the cemetery staff gently suggested I should leave before they locked the gates. I drove home to our empty house, walked past Emma's closed bedroom door, and found Marcus packing a suitcase in our room. "What are you doing?" I asked, though part of me already knew. He didn't look at me. "I'm staying at a hotel for a while. I think we need some space." "Space? Our daughter just died and you need space." Who was that woman at the funeral? His hand stilled on the clothes he was folding. "Her name is Rachel. She's a colleague. She's been supportive during this difficult time." "Supportive how, Marcus? How long has this been going on?" He finally met my eyes, and I saw guilt mixed with defiance. "Does it matter? Our marriage has been over for months. We've just been going through the motions, existing around Emma's illness. Now that she's gone, there's nothing holding us together. Our daughter just died and you're leaving me for another woman. Do you hear how that sounds? I'm not leaving you for her. I'm leaving because I can't do this anymore. The grief, the guilt, your family's drama. I need to start over somewhere that doesn't remind me of everything we lost. Everything we lost. As if Emma was a possession rather than our child. As if her death was something that happened to us rather than to her. Get out," I said quietly. "Pack your things and get out of my house." "It's our house, Lauren. I'm on the mortgage too. The house Emma died in? The house filled with her memories? You can have it. I don't want it. I don't want anything that reminds me of the family I thought we were." Marcus finished packing in silence and left without another word. Without a hug or apology or even acknowledgement that we just buried our daughter. I listened to his car pull out of the driveway, and realized I was truly alone now. No daughter, no husband, no family I could trust. The days after the funeral blurred together. My parents called multiple times, wanting to explain and apologize and make things right. I didn't answer. Victoria sent a gift basket with a card about how sorry she was, how she'd made a terrible mistake. I threw it away without opening it. Marcus's lawyer sent divorce papers, which I signed without reading them carefully. What did it matter? Everything that mattered was already gone. But slowly, quietly, something unexpected began to happen. Emma's teacher organized a scholarship fund in her name for students interested in veterinary science. The parents from her school started a kindness campaign, encouraging random acts of compassion in Emma's memory. Marcus's mother called weekly, not asking anything of me but simply being present in her own grief, sharing memories of Emma that made me laugh through tears. Grace, the hospice nurse, invited me to coffee and introduced me to other parents who'd lost children. Their shared understanding, their lack of platitudes or empty promises, their simple presence in the darkness, began to create something that felt like healing. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but learning to carry the grief without being crushed by it. A year after Emma's death, I stood at her grave on what would have been her 8th birthday. I brought purple flowers and a card I'd written about all the things she was missing, all the ways I still loved her. As I arranged the flowers, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find Jason, Marcus's brother, whom I'd barely known before. He carried his own flowers and a stuffed butterfly. "I wanted to come," he said simply. "Emma was my niece, and I barely knew her. I regret that. I should have been around more." We stood together in silence, then Jason spoke again. "Marcus is engaged to Rachel. Thought you should know before you hear it from someone else." The news should have hurt, but instead I felt only a distant sadness for the people we'd been before grief and betrayal had transformed us into strangers. "I hope they're happy," I said, and meant it. Emma deserved better than parents who fell apart when she needed us most. "You didn't fall apart," Jason said firmly. "You showed up every single day. You held her when she died. You gave her love until her last breath. That's not falling apart, Lauren. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen." His words broke through the numbness I'd been living in, creating a crack where light could enter. Maybe he was right. Maybe surviving wasn't the same as thriving, but it was enough for now. It was a start. I never reconciled with my parents or Victoria. They reached out periodically with attempts at connection that felt hollow and obligatory. I responded politely but distantly, understanding finally that blood relation doesn't guarantee genuine love or support. Real family, I learned, is the people who show up in the hard moments, who sit with you in grief without trying to fix it, who remember your daughter's name and birthday years later. Emma had taught me that in her short life and even shorter death. She'd shown me what unconditional love looked like, and she'd revealed through her absence who truly understood what family means. The lesson was brutal and devastating, but it was also clarifying. I knew now who deserved space in my life and who had forfeited that privilege through their choices. On what would have been Emma's 9th birthday, I released 9 purple balloons at her grave. Each one carried a wish, a memory, a piece of my heart that would